Everyone, it's the 15th of November 2024. I'm Gary Waterman, a former UK police constable. I'm a Christian and a victim of this international government fraud that links to the taxation system and irrefutably deliberately facilitates the most awful crimes against humanity, but in particular the most innocent of all, our children. We're now going to be looking at the Department of Work and Pensions. What I've done is taken screenshots from my research and pasted it into a document. You can verify and corroborate all of this information to see that it's true. I do suggest you do that. This document is available to everybody within my public document file. You can email me on GaryTheTruthSetsUsFree@gmail.com. That's Gary with one R, TheTruthSetsUsFree@gmail.com. Or you can go onto my Telegram channel, which is Gary The Truth Sets Us Free. That's my Telegram channel, Gary The Truth Sets Us Free. Or my YouTube channel, which is Gary Time for Freedom, Gary Time for Freedom. And you'll be able to access the public document file links and see all of this. So what do the Department of Work and Pensions do? Well, this is from the government website, and it says the Department for Work and Pensions, in brackets, DWP, is responsible for welfare, pensions and child maintenance policy. As the UK's biggest public services department, it administers the state pension and a range of working age disability and ill health benefits to around 20 million claimants and customers. This is very important. It's the UK's biggest public service department. I'm not going to read all of this to you. You can pause this. On the right here, it just shows you what they're responsible for and what their priorities are on the bottom left-hand corner. You can either pause this and look at it, or you can go and search Department of Work and Pensions and go and look at what they do. And I'm only showing some of the information there because there's too much to put on here. So who is the head of the Department of Work and Pensions? Well, on the right there you'll see it's Liz Kendall, who was appointed Secretary of State for Work and Pensions on the 5th of July 2024, fairly recently. I doubt that is a coincidence, because as I'm exposing this international government fraud and the awful things it's linked to, they are moving people around all over the place. Okay, they're moving companies, dissolving companies, changing company names, moving individuals from positions and new people into them. So Liz Kendall, let's look at Wikipedia in relation to her. It says Elizabeth Louise Kendall, born 11th of June 1971. I suspect that's very likely relevant because that is when the World Economic Forum started, and they are massively obviously linked to what we're seeing around the world at the moment, and I'm finding multiple connections to that date and around that date. So I think that's very relevant. So she is a British politician who has served as Secretary of State for Work and Pensions since July 2024. She's a member of the Labour Party, and she has been a Member of Parliament for Leicester West since 2010. Interestingly, and probably quite relevantly, I'm finding Leicester is where Madeleine McCann's parents live, and there are multiple connections through to Madeleine McCann throughout all of this research, or to the case of Madeleine McCann. On the right there, it says within Wikipedia, in 1996, 5 years before the World Trade Center disaster, she became a political advisor for Harriet Harman, and then became Harman's government special advisor in the Department for Social Security after Labour won the 1997 general election, and Harman became a government minister. In 1998, when Harman was sacked from the government, Kendall resigned and was awarded a fellowship by the King's Fund, a health charity. She also wrote a series of research papers for the IPPR and was appointed as the director of the Maternity Alliance and Charity for Pregnant Women. She was unsuccessful in an attempt to be selected as Labour's prospective parliamentary candidate for Chesterfield at the 2001 general election following the retirement of Tony Benn. In 2001, she returned to government to work for Patricia Hewitt at the Department for Trade and Industry, and then followed her to the Department for Health, where she was involved in bringing in the smoking ban in 2006. After Hewitt left government, Kendall became the director of the Ambulance Service Network, where she remained until 2010. There's several things to point out in relation to this information. First of all, 1996 is 5 years before the World Trade Center disaster. Harriet Harman, that is mentioned, was part of the National Council for Civil Liberties, which was affiliated to the Paedophile Information Exchange. There is, without a shadow of a doubt, a huge connection to this fraud and the child trafficking paedophilia, and the, shall we say, things that were put in people's arms from 2020, but also to very sinister things involving children indeed. Now, Harriet Harman was connected via those Liberty organisations to a company called Companies Made Simple, which then links to Westco Nominees, where the government have removed the actual company name from the incorporation document. That's very serious fraud indeed. And I suspect that is to remove the link of accountability and liability to the World Trade Center disaster, the child trafficking, and the UK government, and the links to the very other sinister stuff that's been going on, and the targeting of humanity. And that's very serious fraud. To go into a record and remove the company name, that's very serious fraud. And of course, the government control the register for the companies, and they must have been involved in doing that. Reading on, so we mentioned this. We also mentioned 1998. That is around the same time that the special advisor for the last few UK prime ministers, Douglas Dougie Smith, was involved in starting up the Fever sex parties. Research also shows that he has been arrested for threats to kill, and had nailed or screwed an animal, a dead animal, to someone's to their door. But also, the research suggests he practices the dark arts, and I think we now know what that may involve, bearing in mind what we're talking about with these poor children and what's happening to them. There's also a mention of the... Oh, let's go back. Sorry. Also a mention here of the King's Fund. Now, remember, the evidence suggests, if you've been following me, that the Freemasons are massively behind all of this. They are, it appears, have enticed many people in through a false charitable front, when in fact most of, if not all of those charities are linked to international government fraud and can therefore be used for laundering money in relation to criminally obtained money through them. So that was a health charity. Also, it mentions that in 2001 she returned to government. Now, that is the same year as the World Trade Center disaster, and she worked for Patricia Hewitt. Patricia Hewitt was also part of the National Council for Civil Liberties, and was therefore, through that organisation, there was an affiliation to the Paedophile Information Exchange. She also worked, it says, Kendall, for the Department of Health. 2 months after the World Trade Center disaster, the Cancer Research UK Limited company was incorporated. You can go and look at it. On the incorporation document, you have AstraZeneca, and we know what AstraZeneca was involved with. So that therefore means there was some sort of affiliation and plan leading up to whatever happened in 2020. Also on the incorporation document for Cancer Research UK is Lloyds Bank. Now, through the company that I was part of, Exborn Manor Freehold Limited, you can go and look at that company, I acquired forged Lloyds Bank documents, okay, as part of my inquiries and the reports to the police. My previous police force provided 2 emails inadvertently confirming that they were allowing those forged bank documents to be produced by the bank and used in circulation. They also leaked information to a prime suspect who had already named, who was linked to the NHS and police, but also through to the intelligence agencies and through to international banking fraud via JP Morgan, as well as the pharmaceutical industry and Hollywood via Ian Fleming, and therefore the James Bond connection through to Hollywood. And of course, you know what we're seeing going on in Hollywood and the music industry at the moment. Very sinister stuff indeed. Also connected through to the international energy supply of the world via Tesla, where JP Morgan became involved and monopolized that system of energy supply to the world. And in fact, most energy and utility companies are fraudulent entity companies or linked to this international government fraud. So you can see what they've been up to with all of this. Also a mention here, so we've got the health side of things. And of course, I think that led up to what we saw in more recent years. So let's look at the Companies House records for Elizabeth Kendall. And on the left there, you can see this is where I've searched within Google and just typed Elizabeth Louise Kendall and then afterwards Companies House, and it brought up those two records. So I've gone into the first one, and here we have a link to the NHS Confederation Group Company Limited via Elizabeth Louise Kendall. Now, the NHS has already been linked to this international government fraud. And of course, if it's linked to the taxation system, this fraud, then of course the health sector of society would be a fantastic way to defraud the public through the taxation system. You create the health issues, you then say that you need more money to go through the health services to deal with it, and you then defraud that money from the public utilising this system of crime and fraud, because the banks, as I've said, are being allowed to produce forged bank documents for fraudulent entity companies to falsify their company's figures. And this is why most of the scandals that we're seeing are because of this international government fraud that they have in place. And the address on the left there, 50 Broadway, already links previously through the research, and specifically to police associated organisations. And of course, we're talking about the Freemasons here behind this. And the evidence suggests that the Freemasons have a Luciferian occult at the top of it, which is why I believe we are having all of these world issues, because it will be the opposite of good, won't it? If these people are involved in Luciferian practices, that's satanic, basically the opposite of good. And we can see that because of all of this deceit. Now, on the incorporation document, we have a company called OYES, Company Services, and they linked significantly through the previous fraud. In particular here, I'm just showing you the previous documents. You can see Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council on the top right there. So you can research my Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole BCP Council document and you'll see it. Also, just giving some examples here. Lester Aldridge, which is a solicitor in Bournemouth as well. It's significantly linked through the My Company side of things, the company that I was part of. You have links to Max Clifford, which obviously therefore connections through to the international child trafficking, and Jeffrey Epstein, etc. Going into the people record of the NHS Confederation on the left, we have James Birrell, links to Liverpool Healthcare Limited. I suspect the Liverpool connection here is very relevant, and that's because on the research and evidence of the, shall we say, fluid taken from poor little children, fluid, hopefully you know what I mean, red fluid, there's at least 3 addresses on that document based in Liverpool where that fluid appears to have been delivered. So reading on the incorporation document for that Liverpool company, you'll see on the right there we have Jordan's Limited. And when you look at Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited, where I was part of that company, you'll see I was removed. I didn't resign. It says I resigned, but I didn't. I was removed on the 1st of July 2023 for refusing to use the forged bank documents that I had acquired. But when you look on the incorporation document, you will see 2 companies, Jordan's Limited and Swift Incorporations Limited. So here's Jordan's Limited again on this company document. And when you research Jordan's Limited, you'll see that it has a most recent company name of Vistra Limited. And when you go into the incorporation document, you'll see that that incorporation name has never been registered. Hammerplag Limited is the company name on the document. You'll never find that if you search it on the Companies House register, because they've never searched it. They've hidden that company and they have forged the register against that record. A complete crime. They'll know exactly what they were doing. That creates a fraudulent, illegal entity company that should never have been traded and puts everyone at risk that ever uses it. That then allows the ability for the criminally obtained money to be laundered through any of these accounts and sent through into offshore accounts using the international transaction system, which is also fraudulent, and that's called SWIFT. And of course, the banks produce the forged bank documents. Just on this, I know many of you know this, but go and look at Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited and you will see that Deborah Fleming was brought in as a director as the same day that I was removed on the 1st of July 2023. She was a former NHS chief executive in charge of a £700 million budget and 10,000 staff in the area of Hampshire, Isle of Wight and Dorset. Her husband, John Fleming, was a former Dorset police officer, and through those individuals it links to the Fleming family and then links to everything that I've been talking about. So they called a meeting to remove me as a director because I was refusing to file those forged bank documents, and then they filed them afterwards. So we have now back into the NHS, and we have Nigel Edwards. And of course, many people would have been murdered over this. You've got many high-profile deaths being linked to it now, including very senior police officers. But Jill Dando, I suspect, was murdered over this. The evidence is building. That's being corroborated now by somebody else, Jordan Durante, who's got lots of evidence of many murders linked to this. So, you know, it's evil. It's pure evil. And I suppose it would be if we have a Luciferian occult behind the world's problems, then of course this is what we're going to be seeing, isn't it? All of these evil, horrible things happening. It's absolutely possible to change this. We just need the masses to get behind it, the change that is necessary to transparency, to bring about truth and trust again, integrity and the moral conscience to the foreground of humanity, which has been clearly missing for so long from the governance of our nations and has filtered down through into the organisations and across society, and is on the verge very closely of destroying humanity itself. So here we have another company, Nuffield Trading Limited, and Nuffield has already been linked to the fraud. And on the you can go and look on the, you can see the page number here, the bottom right, 19 of 20. There, just little. There it is there, 19 of 20. You can go and look at this yourself in the incorporation document. You'll see various other companies on here. You can see the Griffin Community Trust is the top one there. That's important because that links to the Flemings via, or it appears to be via their company CAPB Limited. CAPB Limited, yeah. And Griffin House is on there. And moving down here, you've got Retro Screen Virology Limited. You know why I'm mentioning that, virology. Also, we've got, what else we've got here? A pension company. Now, that's very important because in the event of a mass depopulation, then that leaves billions, if not trillions, available to be taken from pension funds that are unclaimed. We also have Queen associated companies, Queen Mary University. We have Queen Mary Bio Enterprises and another Nuffield company at the bottom there. So, reading on, within the NHS Confederation, we have Michael Farrer, and he links to the Football Association company. So, we have the Football League Community Limited company, the Football League Trust Limited. Now, this is very important, as I've mentioned in my other evidence. Most big football clubs' companies are fraudulent illegal entities. That means they're probably being used to launder vast amounts of money through them. And this, I believe, is why we have, for example, international high-profile individuals connected to many of these top football clubs, etc. But, of course, it will facilitate child trafficking and the most awful crimes against humanity. And, of course, drug trafficking as well. On the left there, we have and it's all by design and deliberate. On the left there, we have the NHS Confederation, Kevin Geeson. I just thought this was interesting. A company called the Lady Whore Trust. Read into that what you want. On the left there, we also have now Brain Research Trust. And what I'm finding is, you know, they've set up a lot of these companies to appear as though they're trying to help people's health. But this is a fraudulent entity company. You can see here why. So on its statement of compliance is the London Law Agency. Now, the London Law Agency is a fraudulent entity company. When you go and research it, you'll see London Law Agency in brackets the. But on the incorporation document, you have Ganvalon Motors. Well, that's never been registered under that record at all. So the incorporation document hasn't been registered, and therefore it should never have been trading. And the illegality continues through all of these documents. You can't have part of these documents being lawful and part of it not. It's either all got to be lawful to make it lawful, or if any part of it is unlawful, the whole lot becomes unlawful and criminal. So that means that all of these organisations using these company names are also fraudulent, illegal entity companies, and the government would have known that, and they have been complicit in the forgery. So they're the ones forging the register. And of course, all of these health companies, well, that means that what they can do is launder money from tax contributions through into them and defraud the public utilising this system of crime and fraud, you see. So it will be worth trillions, and by far the largest financial crime ever in the history of mankind, and is on the verge of, as I've said, bringing humanity to an end because of the Luciferian system behind this and their occult evil ways. On the left here we have the Dyslexia Institute Trading Limited. On the right you can see its incorporation document. It's illegal because it's Swift Incorporations and Jordans and Sons Limited, and Jordans and Sons is an illegal entity company. We also have the Institute of Fundraising, and of course the Freemasons have said they go under a false front charitable donation fundraising side of things to entice people in and make it appear as though they are good. In fact, it is very, very evil indeed. Interestingly, you can see here on the left the previous company name for this. Look at the dates. So it was incorporated on the 3rd of November 1999, before the World Trade Center disaster, and then it changed its name after the World Trade Center disaster on the 19th of March 2002. And that was so the World Trade Center disaster was in September 2001, and it's an active company, you can see here, and it's never changed its name again since. So you can see that ties in with the World Trade Center disaster. Looking on its incorporation document, you can see Bates, Wells and Braithwaite in the red box there. That's important because that links to the international child trafficking. It links to Keir Starmer and to the Madeleine McCann No Stone Unturned Fund Company as well. On the right there, back into the NHS Confederations. We're not far away at all. We're just going back into that very same company that we're looking at, and looking at different directors. And here we've got Michael Paul Owen. Interestingly, I'm noticing the same surnames now featuring throughout the crimes, or throughout the fraud. So the Owen family appear to be massively linked to this. Within my company, Export Manor Freehold Limited, the management company that resigned after I wanted to look at our bank accounts and refused to even speak to me at all before resigning was called Owens and Porter. The organisation that I was, part of the Dorset Police, which was my previous police force where I was reporting this, was called the Economic Crime Unit. That was overseen by Sam Duryea. Okay, the Duryea family name. She was also the tactical firearms commander for the Metropolitan Police at the time. They moved her from that position, or she moved from the position rather, where they're trying to basically hide accountability and liability. But there's also a company called Mishcon Duryea, which appears to be linked to that family. And within that organisation, you can see all of the, or most of, many of, shall I say, the incorporation companies that are used throughout this system of fraud are linked to that organisation. The surname Duryea also features on one of the Conservative Party incorporation documents as well. So I think what we've got is actually a very small number of people on the scale of things that are running this system of crime and fraud. And I suppose that would make sense if you have the World Economic Forum as the sort of head, supposed head. Of course, there'll be a lot of people in the background that we're not being told about. Very small number of people, centralised system of government fraud. It's been centuries in the making, actually, with what we're now seeing. And the whole thing has been set up around this fraud. So the legal process, the legal system, the courts, the police, the military, through the defrauding the public through the taxation system and military contracts. And this is an international government fraud, okay? So they'll all be doing this with all of their, through the taxation systems, through their own nation's taxation system. They've all jumped on the bandwagon because it's worth trillions. So it's an international collaboration by international governments to defraud their populations. So Michael Paul Owen, links to the British Safety Council. And on the incorporation document, you've got Bates, where is it? Bates, Wells and Braithwaite again. But on the right, this is interesting, you have a director who is linked to an address in Fordingbridge in Hampshire. Now remember, the Deborah Fleming was the NHS chief executive for Hampshire and Isle of Wight, in charge of a £700 billion budget and 10,000 staff. So we have a connection now, Fordingbridge, Hampshire, and you can see the other companies at the bottom there in relation to it. So back into the NHS Confederation, you have Lisa Rodriguez is linked to the grassroots suicide prevention. And I thought that's interesting because, of course, they don't want to prevent mental health. They don't want to prevent suicide because they can't then launder money, taxpayers' contributions, through these companies supposedly set up to help the masses. When in fact, they're there to defraud the public. So they don't want to resolve the world's issues because of this. It's very simple. Okay, this is the root cause of most of the world's problems, everybody, 100%. So you change this system of fraud, you will change the world forever. We've now got, so looking at this grassroots company, you can see a royal connotation or royal mention in the address here, Queen's Road. Okay, I'm finding they're doing this a lot throughout the fraud. And when you go into that company, you have David Martin. And David Martin links to Mazars Tax Services. Well, that features throughout the fraud, and particularly links to the World Trade Center disaster. If you look at the World Trade Center disaster document, and no surprise, this director was appointed on the left. You can see April 2001, the same year as the World Trade Center disaster. On the right here, we have Stephen Shrub in the NHS Confederation company that we were looking at the beginning, and they are connected. A link to, the St Andrews Healthcare company, and they were appointed in October 2022. So I'm noticing lots of moves as I'm exposing this fraud, linking into it. So I was making all of my inquiries with my company starting in early 2022, and at the end of 2022 I started reporting it to the authorities, and throughout 2023, and in fact right up until now I'm still making reports, but they're now panicking. They're not responding at all to any of the police reports as the evidence is building, other than responding saying, please can you stop mentioning Deborah Fleming in your videos. Hold on a minute, what about the irrefutable evidence of child trafficking and international government fraud and very sinister activities? So they're just basically completely ignoring it, but happy to call me up and say, please stop mentioning somebody. Unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, that in itself just tells you, doesn't it, that it's game over. On the left, this same director links to various banking organisations that we're going to look at now. So the first one you've got on the right there, Habib Bank Zurich PLC. This is incredibly important. You can see they were appointed in February 2023 as I'm exposing the fraud publicly. And if you look on the incorporation document for this company, you have an address in Zurich in Switzerland. Now, those of you who've been following my evidence will see that what we appear to have here is a Luciferian cult, possibly stemming from a ancient pharaoh origin, and them now being based in Switzerland, which is a neutral country. It's where CERN is based, which is the Hadron Collider. If you look at the Hadron Collider, CERN's logo, it's 3 sixes twisted into the logo, 666, trying to create the God particle. It's also where the World Health Organization is based, and where the World Economic Forum hold their meetings every year at Davos. Hopefully everyone sees where this is all connecting now. So this is the key to everything, everybody, this fraud. Please come back and look at part 2, and you can see more of this evidence. God bless you all.